What's up, folks, and welcome to Indie Showcase. Bottoms up, y'all. It's another shmup. Yes, indeed. These just keep coming, and I am loving it. I don't know why this genre has just had such an explosion this year, but this is a delight. And yes, we are taking a look at a modern re-release of an older shmup today, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is one I'd never heard of until this modernization came across my radar, but it's very interesting, and I think people who are really into this genre will probably like it because it's actually one that never came out in North America originally. So yes, this is Gleylancer. And yeah, I did pronounce that right. This is from the early 90s when a lot of games had English titles. Really should be Greylancer, but they called it Gleylancer. And well, that's the name it has for all time now. So that's what they're keeping with. So I respect the commitment to it at any rate. And yeah, this is a shmup that came out for the Mega Drive / Genesis, but really it was just the Mega Drive because it was only in Japan. Came out in 1992. Got kind of a mixed reception at the time, and but this newer, smaller publisher decided to resurrect it from modern systems, and I'm glad they did because honestly, this has some pretty cool mechanics to it. It's on all the major consoles, not on PC again. I don't get that. This would be so easy to put on PC. I really don't know why they did that, but hopefully it makes it there at some point. So I'm going to talk about the game, but as usual, we're going to talk about the quality of this modernization first. So if this technical stuff doesn't really interest you as much, check the chapter link in the description down below. You can skip right ahead to the gameplay. So, all right, yes, so I am playing this on the Xbox One, but it is also available on the PlayStation 4 and the Switch, and of course it will work on the newer Xbox and PlayStation machines as well. The menu system for this is pretty basic, but this has most of the options that I think people would want to see in a game like this. So you can redefine all your button inputs, very much appreciated. You don't always see that in every game. I like that. The gameplay mode has two modes, I guess. A little redundant there. So you've got Vintage, which is the way the original Japanese release played, and it takes out all the modern quality of life improvements, but you can't get achievements in this because it needs the extra logic for that. And then there's the modern version. If you're a Puritan of the original of this might bother you a little bit, only in the sense that they've added a couple of things here that you can see that sort of change the core mechanics of the gameplay. We're going to talk about the mover system later, but it does change fundamental elements of how the game works a little bit. I think for the better, because in its default mode, this game is hard as balls, and this adds nice modern twists without ruining it, in my opinion. But some people may disagree. And the fact that you can play the original is nice, but that you can earn achievements that way is probably going to bother some people. And yeah, there's also a mode here that I think is cool. It's called Cheater. You can use this options to figure out some additional cheats if you can figure out how. I think that's pretty cool. I haven't really messed with that too much. So for the video, you can do pixel perfect 4:3 or horribly stretched full screen if you really want that. That's, it's nice that they give you those options. You can change your background wallpaper if you want that comes with this. Oddly, there's only 2 options, which I do find a little weird, though I like that. You can change its brightness and saturation. That's kind of cool. There's nothing in here like scan lines or anything like that, which I know some people are going to be a bit miffed about. Scan lines are not a thing that I personally like, but I think some people are probably going to dislike that. Would definitely like to see those for those people. You can change the cutscene language. This was a Japanese game originally, but the English translation that they've done is pretty good. There is a story to this game. It's a shmup story, so, And yes, if you're playing the modernized version, this game does have a rewind function, so you can change the speed of that. I don't actually know what adaptive means. I haven't really played that very much. And it does have save states, which is always nice. So if you're practicing, trying to get, trying to do really well at a particularly hard section, you can do that, which is always nice. Does this have as many options as an M2 game? No, it doesn't. Does it have most of what people will want? Yeah, aside from maybe a couple more display options, I think it does. And yeah, this menu's basic and doesn't look amazing. You're not here for the menus, right? So overall, especially at the price that they're selling this for, I think they did an acceptable job on that for sure. So when you fire it up, it launches right into the game straight away. And in addition, there are other options within the game itself that you can set. I will say that it is a little weird that you have to go into 2 different menus for these kinds of things. I do think that's a little strange, but it's not that hard to figure out. It surfaces it very easily. So there is a cutscene here at the beginning. We're just going to jump ahead through that. You can check that out yourself if you want. So yeah, you can go to the options here. There are 3 difficulty levels that you can choose from. You can choose to have the story content on or off, which is nice. You can have your shot set to automatic or manual, though there is a button that you can use to auto fire anyway. There's your ship speed. In the vintage version, this is locked. You can't change it in the middle of the game, but you can in the modern version of it as well. So, you know, that's kind of handy. There's also a hold mode that allows you to sort of speed up on demand, which is kind of cool. And there's the typical 16-bit sound test stuff, which is always kind of cool, I think. Now, this is what makes this game interesting here, is the mover system. So a lot of shmups allow you to have options, right? Which are these unlockable little dudes that fly around you that augment your gun capabilities. Well, this has numerous different types of these, as you can see. And they all work very differently, and they fundamentally change the way the game plays. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. In my experience messing around with these, I think some of them make the game objectively easier than others do. Your mileage may vary on that. If you're a particularly skilled player, I could see certain ones of these doing much, much better for you. I'm scrolling through them here so you can see the demonstration, so I don't have to explain them all. Now, again, in the vintage version, whichever one of these you pick, you're stuck with for the whole game. In the modern version, there's a button that allows you to change these on the fly. So that is where Puritans, I think, might have a little bit of a problem with it. Now, it doesn't matter necessarily? Well, no, only in the sense that if you want to play this modern version and also play it the way it was intended, then you just don't have to hit the button to change your movers, right? But you can see here, you can see at the top there, it's changing that. So yes, you can definitely do that if you want. So yeah, that might bother some people, but personally, I think that that's an option that should have been in the game to begin with. And if you're playing the modern version, by using the triggers, you can change the speed at which your ship flies. There's some levels where you're definitely going to want that speed control. Let me just put it that way. It helps even in levels like this, but some of the later levels that have almost maze-like sections in them, you're going to really want that speed control. Again, I think that's something that probably should have been in the game originally. And obviously, like I said, you can choose not to adjust your speed or change the movers if you don't want in the modern mode. And some of you are probably going to say, well, then what about the leaderboards? How does that impact that? Yeah, that is unfortunately one big omission with this game, is that it does not have online leaderboards and it does not have replays. I really think that's almost, at this point, inexcusable in a modernization of a shmup. You know, all the major platforms have leaderboard systems built in, and given that most of these games are principally score attack in nature, they really, I think, should have that ability for online competition. And replays, while optional, I always think are valuable because they're a great way to learn how to maximize the game from particularly skilled players. And in addition, they help combat cheating, because you can easily see if somebody who posted a score, you know, a score to the leaderboard that seems unattainable, you can easily see if they were cheating or not. It is a real unfortunate omission that that's not in this. But for that reason as well, it's easy to play the modernized version with the achievements and everything else and artificially impose on yourself the limitations of the classic versions should you so desire. But yeah, I do think the omission of online leaderboards in any modern shmup is really kind of... I don't like to use the term inexcusable, because I actually think this is still a really good package and a really interesting, unique title. And I think for the price that they're asking, it's still well worth it. But I just feel that that should be really kind of a baseline feature these days, and not something that we're excited to see in modern shmups, in my opinion, or at least modernizations of shmups like this. But that said, I have been really enjoying this. I think the mover system is really, really cool, especially like I'm using search mode right now, which is the one that I prefer, which is where they kind of guide themselves to targets. But the default mode is this, where you actually have to directly control the direction that they fire in. And this is really challenging because you're trying to manage your own shots and then at the same time trying to manage your mover shots so that they're going to go in the way that you want. It gives you a lot of cool opportunities because it allows you to shoot in multiple directions at the same time and focus on multiple targets at the same time. And honestly, you use the normal mode and it is you can see right there, it's really gnarly because you've got to think about two different things simultaneously in a way that I've never seen done in a shmup like this before. I'm kind of surprised this system wasn't really aped by other developers for other shmups because it really adds a whole new dimension to the gameplay, and I think it's pretty cool. But I also think the game tells you that while search mode automates a lot of that and takes a lot of the, that need to think about multiple things at once away, what they claim in the description is that by using search mode, you have to be careful because it will not always necessarily fixate on the target you want it to. So they claim that what makes it more challenging is that it may not be shooting where you want it to shoot. And then if you had manual control, you might have a better flexibility on the battlefield. That hasn't really been my experience. I felt that using search mode, it's not a win button. It certainly isn't. But to me, using search mode definitely has made things less challenging, even in later levels. That's just how I've felt about it. But a lot of Puritans of the game will probably disagree with me on that. And to be honest with you, I like it because even if search mode does objectively make the game a lot easier, well, it does that for the people who want that, and the people who want the greater challenge, well, you can not only turn the difficulty up higher, you have the option to increase the difficulty by choosing a different strategy on how to utilize your movers. So there's a lot of flexibility there in a way a lot of games like this don't necessarily provide. One of the things that people really liked about the various incarnations of Gradius that came out over the years were the fact that Gradius was very much a game where you could customize your experience depending on how you chose to upgrade your ship. Most shmups, there's a lot of shmups out there that will have different weapon pickups that you can get, which this one does have. There are even some that have a couple of different ships you can choose, but those are choosing between different predefined configurations. Whereas in this one, you can choose, there's the different weapons that you can pick up, and then in addition to that, there's also the different configurations of these movers, and depending on how you choose to use those can really change how the levels progress, and you really and it can really impact your experience and your ability to sort of min-max things. And I do think that's very cool. I also think the color palette of this game is generally a little bit muted. It's not a super colorful game, but I think the levels are very interesting. They're all very different in terms of looks, in terms of aesthetics. There's some very interesting bosses in this. Some of the later levels, to me, become very much about... I sort of touched on this before. Some of the later levels are very maze-like, and I'm not a huge fan necessarily of some of those because it becomes a lot less about, dealing with and juggling the different enemies in the game and more about just very carefully moving and make sure you don't hit the walls the whole time. And some people like that. Some people like that. I think some people will probably appreciate that mix-up in formula. Here's a bit of a twist. Like the game suddenly started going up. Not a lot of games did this, and it was very much a what moment when you experienced this for the first time. So yeah, some of the levels become a little bit more about traversal than combat. Some people might like that. Some people might not. I think the mix is interesting. I just think they lean into that a little bit too hard. But yeah, it's... As 16-bit shmups go, this one is very cool and different. And I think it's quite interesting. So I kind of purposely played badly there a little bit to get this. So yeah, here you can sign yourself onto the local only leaderboards, and then you do have continues in this, so you can continue your way through it if you want, though you will be starting the whole level over again. And the later levels in this, even if you make the option, turn the options down so that it's you make it less difficult, the later levels in this game are still no pushover. And if you start playing this on the higher difficulty settings, or especially in the vintage mode, you're gonna have to work for your victories. There's no doubt about that. I think that's gonna be it's gonna be quite a challenge for those people. So I think that's a good thing, because, you know, if a shmup is too easy, you're going to be able to tear right through it, right? And then you're going to be like, well, that's done, and you know, that's it. So, but yeah, that's the core of it here. I think as shmups go, this one is quite interesting and brings some interesting innovations to the table. I'm honestly really surprised that this never left Japan back in the day. This feels like something like the Genesis was a pretty popular machine for this genre, and I feel like this is a game that actually probably could have done pretty well had they gotten it published in North America. And who knows why they didn't back in the day. But it's nice to see that this came out here, and then it did get some localization and a bit of the modernization treatment. You know, I appreciate that this was put out by a very small studio that probably had to prioritize what they did with it. I really think, though shmup stories don't mean too much to me, you know, I think it's really cool that they did this. They gave it a good localization treatment. They added some good quality of life options to it. Like I said, the lack of online leaderboards and replays are borderline inexcusable omissions these days. I really think those should have been added. And some people will be bothered by the lack of screen options like scan lines and things like that. Again, if you're into that, no judgment. If that's important to you and that's enough to make you skip this, I get it. For me, it doesn't matter. But a few more options in that department would have been good. But the thing is, some of these shmup re-releases are coming out for kind of obscene prices, to be honest with you. This is under $10. And for that price, especially to get a unique experience like this that you previously couldn't get if you were outside Japan, I think that's a pretty darn good value for that. And for this publisher's first effort at doing this kind of thing, I think they did pretty well. I hope this is successful enough that they can do other re-releases of other shmups, and that maybe it allows them to either add some more features and options to this one, or at least have them for their second one. Online leaderboards, for real, you got to do that, especially if you're on modern systems. And while you're at it, if you could put this on PC, that'd be all right too. Maybe there's a weird reason for that, for some licensing reason or something else why this can't be on PC, but I would love to see this there, because you know, the PC shmup scene is pretty vibrant these days, and I'd like to see that get put out onto that as well. But yeah, this is a very unique experience, and it's one that I'm glad I had a chance to play, because while there's a ton of good shmups in the 16-bit era, there are not a lot that's really stand out from the pack as being different either mechanically or in terms of their presentation or things like that. And this does both, which I think is really cool and something that we don't get a lot of. So, you know, I say this all the time, but if you're into shmups, I really do recommend giving this a look. It's inexpensive. It's on all the different consoles, so it's easy to access. The fact that this is on the Switch is really cool. Shmups in portable form, always a good thing. I might even pick this up again on that, to be honest with you, just to have it on the go. I think that's cool there. And yeah, it's got enough modernization to easily make it worth what they're asking, even though I wish it had a couple of other things. So yeah, that is Gleylancer. It is out now. Give it a look if you're into shmups, or especially if you want something a little bit different. I think you might enjoy it. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. As usual, if you like what you saw here, please do all the YouTube things. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think of this. Do any of the omissions that I brought up in this Are those deal breakers for you? Is those really important to you? Why are they? I'd like to know about that. And what other old school shmups would you like to see come out on modern systems that haven't yet, especially more obscure ones like this that you think people would be really into? I'd love to know about that, because these seem to be coming out in a deluge lately. So, you know, people are watching. So if there's stuff you wanna see come out, I'd love to know about that too. And as always, you can drop me a follow over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction for multiple variety streams a week. We cover a lot of indie games over there, including ones that you won't see here. I have a great community there, and I'd love to see more people at it. So thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I will see you all on the next Indie Showcase. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take it easy.